Welcome to MathLink. I am Mr. C, and I will be covering this particular unit with adding and subtracting whole numbers. So let's get started. Addition of whole numbers. Three things we're going to talk about. The result of adding numbers is called the sum. So the result of adding the numbers is called the sum. The plus sign indicates addition. Numbers can be added in any order. So we can add them in any order, but we got to keep them in the same place values. There are certain properties we won't necessarily go over right now, but there's two properties that's good to know. It's called the commutative property and then also the associative property. These are examples we're going to talk about later on as we move on into some other math subjects. But as far as adding and subtracting whole numbers, let's look at an example. We're going to add 763 plus 619. So let's go to our whiteboard to see how that looks. So I decided to write it vertically so I can look at the place values, the ones, the hundreds, and the thousands, and line them up and add it. So we're going to start with the ones when we add whole numbers. The ones is going to be where the 3 and the 9 is. This is the ones place value right there. And so we're going to add 3 and 9, and 3 plus 9 is 12. But as we write 12, we're going to write the 2, the last piece of the number, because 12 is 1 and 2, 2 under the 9, and we're going to put the 1 above the 6 and the 100th. So in blue, you still see the 12, 1, 2, but the 1 will go in the 100th place. It's like carrying over to the next, and we put it on top of whatever the number it is on the next place value. So then next I'm going to do is add that blue 1 to that 6. So 1 plus 6 is 7, plus 1 is 8. And so I'm just going to write down 8. There is no other numbers I have to put on or move over on the top because it is a one-digit number, which is 8. Now I'm going to add the 7 and the 6. So we go to the 100th position, and 7 plus 6 in our case will be 13. And since there is no other numbers to add, we'll put down the whole 13. And then we go 1, 2, 3, comma. So our final answer, or the sum, will be 1,382. And that would be the sum or the answer that we have for this particular problem. Now let's look at another example that I've placed in our whiteboard. We're looking at 5,875 plus 1,354. Again, to add, we're going to start with the ones, and then we're going to move over to the tens, hundreds, and the thousands place to add. So let's get started. So let's start with 5 and 4. 5 and 4 in this case will be 9. And so we just put the 9 under in the ones place. And then we go to the 100th and look at the 7 and 5. 7 plus 5, in our case, we look at it as 12. Again, this 12, we will write the 2 under the 5, and the 1 will go on the top. Again, if you see the blue 1, we still see 12, but remember, we're carrying that 1 to the next place value, which is the 100th. Now let's add the 100th. We got 1, 8, and 3. So 1 plus 8 is 9. 9 plus 3, in our case, is 12. So we end up with another value of 12. Now everything's not always 12, but it seems to be like this in our examples. So we put down the 2, carry the 1 up here, and now we add the 1, which is above the 5, to the 5, and then add 1. So 1 plus 5 is 6, plus 1 is 7. And that will be our answer for this particular problem. And this is the sum. Again, the sum is the answer since we're adding what we're looking at for our answer, 7,229. Now let's look at one more problem we're going to put on the whiteboard for addition. I decided to add three numbers, and let's see if we still can do the same particular process that we did earlier when we did with two numbers. And this will work also with four numbers, five numbers, six numbers. Just make sure you line up each of the numbers according to the place value. Again, we're going to start with the ones place value, which is right here, and add those values. So let's look at it. We have 5 plus 8, and so 5 plus 8 is 13, plus another 3 is 16. And so in our case, we'll put the 6 here, and the 1 will go into the next place value, which is the 100th. Again, look at the blue numbers. We still have 16 written down, but notice how we carry that 1 above. Now we add 1 plus 4 plus 7. So 1 and 4 is 5. 5 plus 7, again, look like with the 12 must be a good number today, is 12. And we put the 1 in the next place value, and which would be the 100th. And so again, we have 12 written down, but is spread out, or we carry that 1 to the next place value. Now we add 1 plus 3 plus 6 plus 1. 1 plus 3 is 4. 4 plus 6 is 10, plus 1 is 11. And so we just put down the 11, put our comma, always put our comma there. And so our answer is 1,126. That is the sum that we get. A lot of times we like to circle our answer so whoever's looking at our work can understand where the answer is located. And so that's how we add whole numbers. Now we're going to look at subtracting of whole numbers. It's a little bit different for our subtracting whole numbers, but it still stays the same in lining up your place values. The quantity or the quantity subtracted is called the subtractand, and the quantity from which the subtractand is subtracted is called the minuend. Now, the result is called the difference. So in addition, the result was called the sum. In subtraction, the difference is what we call. So let's look at an example. We want to subtract 917 minus 523. So let's go to our whiteboard and show how we can subtract whole numbers. So here we are on our whiteboard, and these are the two numbers. And notice I did again vertically. Again, we're going to start with the ones place. And what I like to notice and put in the back of your mind is the top number in each of the place values greater than the bottom number? If it is, we go directly. If not, we're going to have to borrow from a place value. So let me show what I mean by that. So we start with the ones, and the ones is 7 and 3. Top number is 7, bottom number is 3. Since the top number is greater, we can subtract 7 minus 3. So in our case, our 7, we're going to subtract that 7 minus 3. And our answer in this case we're going to write down 4. Now we go to the next, the 100th. In the case here, we have the 1 and the 2. But notice the 1, the top number, is less than the bottom number. So we just can't subtract that. We want those top numbers to be greater than the bottom number. So what we're going to do, we're going to take away one value, or 1, from the 9. And so that 9 will become 8, because since we took away one value and put down 8, and then this 1 will not just be only 1, but we look at it as being 11. So we'll be looking at, and how did that 1 become 11? Again, we took away 1 from the 9 and made that an 8, and we carry that 1 over with the other 1, and so it becomes 1 and 1, which is 11. And we'll do some more to give you an idea how we continue to take values from and go to the next value. And so 11 minus 2, in our case, we're going to say that's 9 because the top number is greater. And now we look at the hundredth, 8 minus 5. And since the 8 is greater than 5, we do 8 minus 5. And in this case, our answer will be 3. And so I'm going to circle my answer. It'd be 394. Let's look at some more examples of subtraction where we have to borrow from another place value to get the number on the top being the greatest. Now let's look at these two numbers. 6,235 minus 1,864. We want to find the difference. The difference would be the answer for our subtraction. Start with the ones position. So let's just start off. 5 minus 4 is 1. So we're good. The top number is greater. Let's look at the next place, the hundredth value. Now notice that 3 is the top number and is less than 6. So in this case, we have to borrow 1 from the 2, and this becomes 13. And now that 2 will become a 1 because we borrow 1 from there. So the 3 is still there, but we borrow 1 and we put that 1 in front of 3, becomes 13. Now we're saying 13, which is bigger than 6, not just 3. Now we're saying 13 minus 6. So let's look at that. 13 minus 6, in our case, would be 7. Now let's look at the hundredth position. Now remember, we had that red 1. It's not a 2, it's a 1 now. It'd be 1 minus 8. Notice the 1, which is on the top, is less than the 8. So we're going to have to borrow again. In this case, we borrow from our 6. Our 6 becomes what? A 5. And then this will become an 11. We still had that 1 from the beginning, but we put that other 1 next to it. So now we have 11, which is bigger than 8. 11 minus 8. In our case, it's going to be 3. And now we look at the 5, and then 5 minus 1 is 4. And then this would be our answer. This is the difference, 4,371. Let's look at one more subtraction problem. We're looking at 6,005 minus 5,127. Again, we're still going to do what we did previously. We're going to start with the ones and see if the top number is bigger than the bottom number. And so in this case, we look at the 5, and I'm going to do this a little bit differently so you can see it in red. And the 5 is the top number, is less than, so we got to borrow from our 10th position. Now notice the 10 has a 0. There's nothing to borrow from. Oh my goodness. So that means we're going to have to borrow from the next position, which is a 0 again. There's nothing there. So the 10th is here. This is the 10th place. This is the 100th. There's nothing there. We have nothing to borrow, 0. So that means we got to borrow all the way from the 6th, from the 1,000th, which is 6. So watch what I'm going to do up here. So in this case, I'm going to make this 5, and this goes to the next position again. We'll just put a 1 there. And to make it easier for you to understand, I'm going to put down a 10. But we're still working on the ones position. We got to change that 5. And so in this case, I'm going to have to borrow another 1 from the 100th position. That 10 is actually going to change to be a 9. And this 0 is going to become a 10. So all I did was borrow from each of the place values, and I can do that. The 6, which is in this 1,000, became a 5. That 0 again, we took 1, it just become 10. But notice we're going to have to borrow again 1 to change the other value that's in this position, which is the 10th. That becomes 10. And so now we have a value for that 0. That 0 in the 10th is a 10. Now let's borrow from there. Borrow 1 from there, that becomes 9. And so notice I'm putting in blue that I'm borrowing, and this 5 will become 15. So my top number is really 599, and then we have the 15th in the 1st position. Now we do 15 minus 7. In our case, it'd be 8. So now 15 is greater. Now we look at the next position, which is this one. It's the 100th. And notice we're looking at the 9. It's not a 0, it's not a 10, it's a 9 that we have. And we're going to do 9 minus 2, which is 7. Then we look at the 1,000th position. Again, it's not a 0 or a 10. We borrow from there, so it's really a 9. 9 minus 1 is 8. So let's make sure we have this. My 7 disappeared, so here's my 7. And we'll put this in blue, guys. This is 8. And now we do the last. 5 minus 5, which is 0. In this case, you don't have to write 0 since it's our leading digit. So our final answer will be 878. And then I'm going to circle it to show that is my answer for the difference. So those are the basic problems of adding and subtracting whole numbers. If you have any questions, feel free to review this video again or look at some other resources in our MathLink website. Hopefully this helped. Thank you.